Today, I'm really excited to be introducing you all to a special guest. Her name is Kim Charles. Kim Charles will be speaking to us about how she navigated the waters of her career as an accountant and entrepreneur. Thank you for coming. And I want us to take a little bit, a moment for the viewers to get to know you for just a minute and explain to them, what is it that you do for a living?
Yes, so I went to Florida State. I got my bachelor's and master's in accounting. Then I went on and worked for one of the top 4 accounting companies, KPMG.
That's amazing.
And I had a lot of Fortune 500 companies where I did auditing for them. And now I've moved on to more endeavors. I'm still doing accounting for a different company, but I'm also an entrepreneur as well.
Wow, that's amazing. When I hear you talk, I'm thinking you must have gone through a lot of school.
Yeah.
So tell me about your experience in the timeline of your journey.
Yeah. So to get your accounting degree for undergrad, that's about 4 years. And then to get your master's is another year added to that. As far as my experience, it was a bit challenging because I am a first generation college graduate. And so I didn't have anybody to give me a roadmap. And so I decided to seek different opportunities to help me understand what college was, what was the experience, what should I expect. So I got into this program called the CARE program. And they brought you out to the college campus a semester before everything started. And that was great because I got to make some connections, but also really understand the lay of the land. And then that kind of helped me have like a different focus when I actually started my courses in college. Yeah.
Wow. So you talked about this CARE program. That was in replacement of you being exposed to the accounting industry. What was the CARE program like?
The CARE program was really fun, but it really taught you the basics of college. Like, it really just taught me how do I manage my schedule, Going from high school to college is just 2 different waters. And so the CARE program really just introduced me to different professors and just really helped me understand what it took to be successful in college. Like, I didn't have that growing up. I just knew that I needed to go to college in order to make my mom proud, right? She did so much sacrificing for me to make sure I got into good schools. And so what the least I could do is make sure I put my best foot forward in navigating this chapter of my life.
I get that. That's amazing. To anyone that's out there listening, I've never heard about the CARE program, and I too went to college. So how could someone, maybe a high school student, transitioning to or getting prepared to apply for school, how could they find out about the CARE program and apply for it?
Yeah, I would start looking in your junior year. If you're currently in high school right now, if you're a junior, start looking into the CARE program. It is an extension of FSU. And if you go on the website, you should have all the credentials that you need in order to apply. One tip I would say, if you're struggling with the SAT, go ahead and take the ACT because they really like to see that and they'll honor any high scores that you get there.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
So now your CARE program is navigating you through your college career. Now we're at KPMG. Walk us through that phase of your life. How did you hit the ground running as an accountant?
That's a really good question. So one thing that I learned in college is that it's not all about what you know, but it's about who you know. And so I made sure that I stayed connected to the people who were going in the same direction as I was. So because they were asking me, hey, what companies are you applying for? Are you going to get an internship? Then it got my mind thinking. So I actually was someone who got an accounting internship as a sophomore, which was not normal. Typically, if you're pursuing your accounting degree, you'll get an internship your junior year. So I started a year early.
Oh, wow.
And so I was able to really get into that environment so early that by the time I started, I knew people, I was connected, I felt comfortable. So that's really how I got my ground running. I started very early.
So you did something that normally people would do their junior year, you did it your sophomore year.
Right.
How did you do that?
I just came in and told them I wanted an internship. I showed up as a sophomore year to the career fair, and I got denied. I got denied by about 2 out of the 4 companies, and they said you're starting too early. But the other 2 were they had diversity internships. And so I leveraged my background and applied myself, and I got the internship.
So you basically found your way to, you found your seat at the table. So tell me, what is it like working for one of the top 4 accounting firms in the nation?
Wow, it was a lot of pressure for sure. Honestly, my focus when I initially got my job there was just I needed to get an internship and I needed to make sure I had a job once I graduated from college. So the fact that I was able to work at a company like that, it gave me so much experience. It definitely fed into my just work ethic that I have now because you have to do so much work at such a high level. And of course, like anybody you ask who's into these accounting firms, they work a lot of hours. But I think that is what fed into my work ethic today.
You go from being an accountant from one of the top 4 accounting firms in the nation to now an entrepreneur. What was that transition like?
Yeah, so I'm still doing accounting, but I remember just working so hard and thinking about where I wanted to be the next 5 to 10 years from now, right? And so I remember blatantly sitting at a desk and working with my team, and I was looking at the partners, and the partners were there late the same time I was there. And so I kind of had like an out of body experience where I was like, is this what I really want to do? Do I want to continue just working towards someone else's dream, or do I want to take a bet on myself? And I don't know, it's something that you just feel. And I decided to not quit my job immediately, but just balance the two, doing the accounting daytime and then nighttime I would do the entrepreneurship side.
Wow. So I'm hearing a lot of hours, a lot of working hours.
Yes.
How do you find time for yourself amongst it all?
So this was not a practice that I did back then. I used to literally like work crazy hours, but now I set boundaries. So I set certain times that I don't work. And balancing entrepreneurship and corporate accounting is a very challenging task. So I don't mingle the two. What I do in entrepreneurship is very creative, but very organized, and accounting pulls a different side of my brain. So if I were to do accounting work and then do entrepreneurship work, my brain would just go crazy. So what I decide to do is accounting has this much of my time. Where I work now, they don't pay me overtime, so they're not going to get overtime hours.
No, that's right.
So I have a certain amount of time that I work for accounting, and then after that, take a break, recenter myself, and then work into my entrepreneurship for maybe 3 to 4 hours, weekends maybe, but I'm in this stage of life of seeking balance and not rushing or pushing myself into being a certain thing or getting certain goals at a certain time. I kind of just flow with the creativity. And then actually from that method, I've been getting a lot more things done.
So Kim, you told us that you were an accountant and what it was like to work for KPMG. But I want to understand, what were some of the obstacles you faced being in a male-dominated field?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I forgot to mention that I actually worked for State Street after I worked for KPMG. And so within that field, it was definitely male dominated. And I actually worked for 2 superiors that were males. And so One of them was a VP, the other one was the senior manager. The senior manager quit, so now I was reporting directly to the VP. So within that experience, I remember just getting assigned these reports that were a little bit outside of my expertise. And so what I had to do is just teach myself. I had to leverage the network that I had to figure out how to complete these reports.
Mm-hmm.
And later on, I figured out that I was really completing my VP's work.
Wow.
And so with that being said, I became, even though that was an experience that was very challenging for me,
Mhm.
because of course I had to handle my work and someone else's work,
Mm-hmm.
it started to feed into my confidence as an accountant.
Mm.
It started to teach me that I was able to master different levels of accounting with little support. And I had situations where VP would call me after hours and everything like that. And those were my training grounds in the boundaries that I have today. When I started getting assigned assignments that were outside of my expertise or on a higher level, I built my confidence there.
Mm.
And I also realized that VP was very anxious, right? Because he wasn't completing the work. So he would call me after hours, had a lot of pressure on me. And that's where I figured out how to have boundaries in the corporate America space. And so I realized in that instant that my mental health was so much more important than what I can produce. And so as I continued to go through that experience, I kept my boundaries. I completed the reports, but then this thought of, okay, what if I worked for myself? If I'm able to put this much energy, this much time, this much effort into another company's dream, what would it look like if I did it for myself?
That's amazing. I love that you were able to see an issue, but you found a way to overcome it. But more importantly, you're using now the skill set that you developed for him for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So that's amazing. And thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that with us.
No problem.
And so it leads to my next question. What was maybe a fear that you had to overcome in order to be as successful as you are today in your career?
Yeah, so that fear came right after learning all those bullet points that I told you about. And that fear was like would I fail if I bet on myself? Like I've had experiences where I pursued entrepreneurship. So in college, I actually opened up a hair company and I sold hair for a little bit. But that was a short-lived, experience because I moved to Atlanta and then got into KPMG and I had to work so much. So I didn't have time. So I had that experience and now I just had this fear of not wanting to fail again. But I knew that it was like a feeling. I knew that I had so much more to give. And so that drive to bet on myself and to be able to control the output really inspired me to just step out on my own. So I kind of had this mindset was like, okay, well, if I keep pouring all my efforts into this company's dream, I'm always going to hit a ceiling. But if I pour into my own dream, what can that do for me? What can that do for my family? What could that do for other people who are struggling with whether they should bet on themselves?
Wow. It sounds like every obstacle led to you realizing that you should become an entrepreneur, which you are today.
Right.
That's amazing.
Yes.
And my last question for you today is, have you ever experienced imposter syndrome within your career? And if so, if you could share with us an experience that you had and how you overcame that.
Yeah, so that experience would be my experience with KPMG. That's where I had imposter syndrome. That was my first job out of college.
Yes.
I mean, I knew everybody. I knew how to navigate the waters, but I didn't really know what I was doing.
Okay.
So a little bit more about the accounting background. When you're auditing, you're as an associate or as a senior associate, you might be presented with opportunities where you're speaking to the CFO of the company or you're speaking to the controller of the company, and all you have is training. You don't really have the experience, the confidence to be able to go to these people and make sure you're asking the right questions. And on the other side is they're not excited to see auditors, and they probably have like a very short patience because here they are trying to focus on their day-to-day tasks, but then they're also having to stop and answer questions and provide extra support to us. And so my imposter syndrome definitely kicked in because I just didn't think that I was prepared enough or good enough. But what I had to do is just go in and take a leap. And if I fail, I fail. If I get the questions wrong, I can easily just say, hey, like, this is my second client. I'm just making sure that I'm just making sure that, I'm asking the right questions. And if I didn't know a question, it was okay to say, hey, let me get back to you. So I tried to figure out ways to answer the questions that I didn't know without faking it, without trying to pretend that I knew, being honest, being transparent, but still keeping it professional. I think that is something that people really respect more than you acting like you know what the answer is and then saying the wrong thing, and then now you have to clean that up. So to answer your question, the imposter syndrome definitely was a thing that I experienced early in my career, but I just found ways to really be present in that moment, accept the season that I was in, and find ways to navigate through it.
That's amazing. It sounds to me like you've always had a seat at the table from day one with you starting your career at KPMG.
Yeah, I thank the Lord for that.
And I know I said that the other one was my last question, but this one really is it.
Okay.
What is it like to have a seat at the table at such a young age?
That's a really good question. I've always been very mature for my age because I was raised by a single mother, so it's just me and her. And I remember when I was 8 years old, I remember asking my mom, hey, what's wrong? And she was like, don't worry about it. And I told her, it's okay, you can talk to me.
Wow.
So since I was young, I've always had this spirit of wanting to just help other people and just going about that in a very mature way. So I honestly never noticed that I was the youngest in the room. I just always wanted to understand, well, how can I add to the room?
Wow.
How can I help other people? What can I do to make sure that when I leave this room, this environment is different than when I came into this room?
I know we feel it here already. Kim, I want to thank you today for coming on the show and explaining to us how you navigated the waters of your career. It really, the kind of conversation we had today, I think it's extremely important because there are other career-driven women like yourself and like me who have similar experiences, but we never really talk about that.
Right.
And most importantly, today you talked about the obstacles you went through, but you also talked about how you solved those obstacles. And that's you realizing that you were destined to be an entrepreneur. And so I love that the conversation, although you may have gone through what you've experienced, the end goal was you finding where you would be more happy or more at peace, shall you say. And it just brings me so much joy to hear that there's more to come.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Tracy. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
And I'm super excited about your journey as well.
Thank you.
All right.